Frank DeVita's hands freeze on the steel mechanism. 18 years old, soaked to the bone, staring at 36 boys packed into a landing craft, like sardines in a tin. The British coxswain screams over the roar of diesel engines. "Drop the bloody ramp!" Frank doesn't want to kill his friends. But in 3 seconds, when that ramp crashes down, 15 human beings will cease to exist. 15 boys who'd been joking about hometown girls and arguing about baseball just minutes before. Gone, evaporated, converted from living, breathing teenagers into statistics by bullets moving at 2,500 feet per second. This is 6:30 a.m., June the 6th, 1944. You're about to witness mathematics' attempt to exterminate hope. The equation is elegant, terrifying, perfect. MG-42 machine guns, 22 bullets per second. Beach crossing time, 90 seconds. Total exposure, 1,980 bullets per man. Human body, 5 quarts of blood. Blood loss for death, 3 quarts. Time to bleed out, 4 minutes. Heinrich Severloh sits behind that weapon, 21 years old. Farm boy from Lower Saxony. He's calculated that every American must pass through his killing zone. Basic geometry makes missing impossible. For the next 8 hours, Severloh will fire 12,000 rounds. His personal count, 1,000 American casualties. But Heinrich doesn't know something yet, something that will break his mind and reshape human history. The bombardment has failed. Every bomb fell 3 miles inland. 32 Sherman tanks are sinking to the ocean floor, drowning 160 tank crews in steel coffins. The intelligence is catastrophically wrong. An entire German division exists that Allied planners never knew about. And 43,000 American soldiers are charging into the most perfect killing machine ever designed. Mathematics says 80% should die in the first wave. Mathematics says this assault should collapse in 20 minutes. Mathematics says Omaha Beach should become the graveyard of democracy. But mathematics didn't account for 19 boys from Bedford, Virginia, who are about to die in 6 minutes and change the course of human civilization. It didn't account for a one-legged German general who spots the invasion fleet and can't convince his superiors it's real. It didn't account for a photographer named Robert Capa who will capture images that define courage for eternity. Because sometimes, when the equation becomes impossible, when survival equals 0, when death becomes mathematically certain, human beings do something that transcends calculation. They refuse to accept the math. Welcome to Omaha Beach, where courage became a weapon more powerful than physics, where impossible odds met unstoppable will, where democracy looked at fascism's perfect murder machine and said one word: no. At 5:15 a.m., Major Werner Pluskat peers through powerful artillery binoculars from his observation post at Pointe Ras de la Percée. What he sees defies belief. Ships stretching to the horizon like a grey carpet covering the English Channel. Pluskat has been an artillery observer for 3 years. He knows the difference between exercises and invasions. This is the invasion. Sir, it's the invasion. Pluskat radios to his headquarters. Thousands of ships. This is it. Are you certain? Comes the skeptical reply. God damn it. Yes, the sea is black with ships. But Pluskat's superiors don't believe him. Similar reports have been false alarms. German High Command thinks this might be a diversion for the real invasion at Pas-de-Calais. What Allied intelligence doesn't know, what will turn Omaha Beach from difficult assault into near catastrophe, is that the German 352nd Infantry Division has been moved into position directly behind the landing beaches just 5 days earlier. Allied planners expect to face the 716th Static Division, old men and boys with obsolete weapons in concrete bunkers. Instead, they will assault battle-hardened veterans of the Eastern Front with modern equipment and tactical competence. The 352nd Infantry Division consists largely of survivors from Stalingrad and Kursk. These men know how to kill efficiently. They've seen the worst warfare can offer, and emerged as professional soldiers who understand that survival depends on killing enemies faster than enemies can kill you. General Dietrich Kreiss, commanding the 352nd, has positioned his troops with lethal expertise. Machine gun nests sited for interlocking fire, artillery pre-registered on likely landing zones, mortar positions hidden behind the bluffs, where they can drop rounds with precision. But Kreiss faces an impossible strategic situation. His division covers 25 miles of coastline with 12,000 men, barely half strength. Promised reinforcements never arrive. The Luftwaffe provides no air support. Panzer reserves remain locked in place by Hitler's personal orders. We must stop Europe's invasion with one understrength division, Kreiss writes to his wife on June the 5th. If tomorrow brings battle, may we prove worthy of the men under our command. Kreiss never sees another sunrise. American naval gunfire kills him 3 days later, but his division's performance on D-Day represents one of the finest defensive actions in military history. Their interlocking fields of fire with neighboring positions create a killing zone that should stop any assault. But what German intelligence doesn't understand is the quality of American courage under fire. The 352nd Division expects to face conscript soldiers with limited training and questionable motivation. Instead, they will fight citizen soldiers who believe deeply in the cause they're defending. The collision between German professional competence and American democratic determination will create 8 hours of the most intense combat in military history. But first, the Americans must survive the approach to shore, where 32 Sherman tanks are about to demonstrate the difference between theory and reality in amphibious warfare. At 5:30 a.m., 32 Sherman tanks fitted with inflatable canvas screens begin launching from LSTs 5,000 yards offshore. Each tank weighs 32 tons. Each carries a 5-man crew trained to provide fire support during the critical first minutes of the assault. The DD tanks represent innovative engineering. Sherman tanks modified with propellers and waterproof canvas screens that should allow them to swim ashore under their own power. In calm water and short distances, the concept works perfectly. But Omaha Beach offers neither calm water nor short distances. The intelligence failure compounds American problems exponentially. Instead of facing 3,000 defenders with limited capabilities, they assault 12,000 veterans with modern weapons and professional competence. Lieutenant Arthur Junker, commanding Widerstandsnest 72, represents the quality of opposition the Americans will face. A veteran of 3 years on the Eastern Front, Junker has survived because he understands how to use terrain, firepower, and tactical patience to maximum advantage. The Americans will come at us with courage and determination, Junker tells his men on June the 5th. But courage without tactical intelligence is merely expensive suicide. We will teach them the cost of attacking prepared positions. Junker's strong point includes 2 MG-42 machine guns, a 50mm anti-tank gun, and an 81mm mortar. His 12-man crew has enough ammunition to fight for 6 hours without resupply. The sea runs 4 to 6 feet, near the upper limit for DD tank operations. Naval commanders, fearful of German shore batteries, launch the tanks from maximum distance rather than bringing LSTs close to shore. Tank Commander Sergeant Robert Hartley watches the first DD tank drive off the LST ramp and immediately begin taking on water. The canvas screen, designed for gentle swells, cannot handle the wave action in the channel approaches. "That tank's going down!" Hartley shouts to his crew. "Driver, reverse engines." But it's too late. Orders have been given. 32 tanks must enter the water whether conditions are suitable or not. Military schedule takes precedence over tactical reality. The first tank disappears beneath the waves in 90 seconds, taking 5 men with it. The crew has no escape procedure for underwater emergencies. When 32 tons of steel sink in deep water, there's no survival mechanism. The second tank lasts 2 minutes before waves overwhelm the canvas screen. 5 more men drown in a steel coffin of American engineering. Tank after tank follows the same pattern. Drive off the ramp, take on water immediately, sink like a stone. 5 men die. Private First Class Donald Jones, assistant driver in the 14th tank, watches 12 tanks disappear before his turn comes. He knows the mathematics. 32 tanks, 160 crewmen, survival rate approaching 0. "This is murder," Jones tells his tank commander. "We need to abort this operation." "Orders are orders," comes the reply. "We launch on schedule." Jones's tank sinks in 3 minutes. He escapes through the driver's hatch and swims towards shore, but his 4 crewmates drown before they can get out. By the time Jones reaches the beach, he's one of only 12 DD tank crewmen still alive. The British, operating in the same sea conditions, keep their DD tanks aboard LSTs until 800 yards from shore. Most British tanks make it safely to the beach. The Americans, following orders that made sense in calm water, lose 32 tanks and 160 crewmen to drowning. Coast Guard signalman Douglas Munro, operating a rescue boat, manages to save 14 tank crewmen from the water. Munro makes repeated trips into the area where tanks are sinking, pulling survivors from the channel, despite machine gun fire from shore. "Those boys didn't deserve to die like that," Munro reports to his commander. "Drowned before they could even fight." The tank disaster eliminates the primary fire support for American infantry. The men approaching Omaha Beach have lost their mobile artillery before the shooting even starts. But worse than the tactical impact is the psychological effect on troops approaching shore. Soldiers in landing craft watch American tanks disappear beneath the waves and realize that American engineering and American planning are not infallible. If they can't get the tanks ashore, Private Harold Baumgarten thinks as he watches another Sherman sink, what chance do we have? The DD tank disaster becomes the first of many equipment failures that transform a difficult assault into a near impossible mission. But it also demonstrates something fundamental about American military culture. When equipment fails, soldiers adapt. What? The infantry will assault Omaha Beach without tank support, without adequate artillery preparation, without many of the advantages they've been promised. They will succeed through individual courage and collective determination, rather than technological superiority. Bedford, Virginia, population 3,200, nestled where the Blue Ridge Mountains catch the morning sun like a promise of better days ahead. The kind of place where everyone knows everyone, where church socials fill the fellowship hall, where Friday night football games bring 3 generations together under lights donated by local businesses. This isn't a military town. No base, no defense industry, no martial tradition stretching back through history. Bedford grows tobacco and raises children and minds its own business. It's farming country, small business country, the kind of place that sends its boys to war reluctantly and prays for their safe return every Sunday in white-steepled churches. But war has a way of finding even the most peaceful places. 30 boys from this town sit in a landing craft, approaching death. They've been brothers for 3 years, bound together by shared training, shared hopes, shared fears about the war that's taking them so far from everything they've ever known. Company A, 116th Infantry Regiment, 29th Division. The Blue and the Grey, a National Guard unit that traces its lineage to Confederate and Union veterans who served together after the Civil War. The irony isn't lost on anyone. Boys whose grandfathers fought each other now fight together for the same cause. These aren't professional soldiers. They're citizen soldiers who were clerks and farmers and mechanics 6 months ago. Boys who should be starting families, building careers, living the American dream they're fighting to preserve. Roy Stevens, 19 years old, helps run his family's general store on Main Street, where the cash register still has mechanical keys and the floor creaks in familiar places. He stocks shelves, makes deliveries, knows every customer by name and their children's names too. Can tell you the weather by the way old Mr. Patterson walks, predicts storms by how Mrs. Henderson's arthritis acts up. Whoa. Roy writes to his mother every week. letters filled with observations about English countryside and reassurances about his safety. Always ends them the same way. Don't worry about me, Mama. I'll be careful, and I'll come home soon as this mess is over. His last letter, written 3 days before D-Day, sits in her apron pocket as she needs bread this morning. She doesn't know her boy is about to die in a foreign land she can't even pronounce. Bedford Hoback, 22, carries a photo of Frances in his breast pocket, creased from handling and smooth from his thumb, tracing her face. They've been together since high school, planned their whole life together down to the house on Elm Street they want to buy, and the 3 children they'll name after their grandparents. The engagement ring waits in his mother's china cabinet, wrapped in tissue paper. Frances has already said yes in her heart, though Bedford wants to propose properly at the church social when he gets home. They've talked about everything: the wedding, the honeymoon, the life they'll build together in Bedford, where their children will grow up safe and free. The photo will be found later, blood-soaked, but still recognizable, by a medic who takes time to clean it carefully before mailing it home with a note. He was thinking of you when he died. Clifton Lee, 18 years old, still gets carded when he tries to buy cigarettes, though he's old enough to die for his country. Too young to vote, but old enough to carry a rifle into hell. He writes poetry in secret, afraid the other boys will think him soft. Dreams of becoming a teacher like his father, maybe writing books someday about the places he's seen and the things he's learned. His last poem, unfinished, will be found weeks later in his blood-stained journal. Mother, do not weep for me when morning comes and I am gone. I go to make the world more free for children yet unborn. Though shadows gather round my path and death may claim my breath, I'll trade my tomorrows gladly for their liberty instead. Ray Nance, 20, has hands like leather from working tobacco and corn since he was old enough to walk behind a plough. Never been more than 50 miles from Bedford until the army shipped him to England. Writes to his girlfriend Mary about the strange English countryside, how different people talk over there, how he can't wait to show her the pictures he's taking with his Kodak camera. The camera will be destroyed in the landing. The pictures will never develop. Mary will keep his letters tied with a blue ribbon for the rest of her life, reading them on quiet evenings when she needs to remember what love sounded like. John Wilkes, 21, works at Bedford Auto Supply, can fix any engine ever made, has a natural gift with machinery that borders on the supernatural, can diagnose problems by the sound an engine makes, knows exactly which wrench to reach for without looking. The other boys tease him about getting soft duty as a mechanic when they get to Europe. You'll be fixing Jeeps while we're fighting Germans, they joke, living easy while we're getting shot at. But Wilkes carries an M1 Garand, not a toolbox. He volunteered for infantry to prove he's as brave as any of them, as willing to sacrifice for the cause they all believe in. These aren't statistics. These aren't military assets to be expended in pursuit of strategic objectives. These are dreams walking toward death, love letters never sent, futures that will never exist. At 6:30 a.m., their landing craft approaches Easy Red Sector, directly toward Heinrich Severlo's mathematically perfect killing zone. 6 minutes. That's how long it takes to destroy a generation. Roy Stevens dies first. The bullet enters his forehead as he's looking up at the sky, thinking about home, wondering if his mother is making breakfast right now. The light goes out between one heartbeat and the next. He never knows what hit him. Bedford Hoback makes it 3 steps up the beach before machine gun fire cuts him in half at the waist. The photo of Frances falls into sand that's already turning red with American blood. His last coherent thought is her name, spoken like a prayer. Clifton Lee crawls toward a tank trap, his poetry journal pressed against his chest like armor that might protect his heart. A rifle bullet punches through the journal, through his unfinished poem about sacrifice and into his heart. His last words are whispered. Tell mother I was not afraid. Ray Nance tries to help a wounded squad mate, exposing himself to draw fire away from the injured man. Machine gun bullets walk up his body from legs to chest to head with mechanical precision. The wounded soldier he tried to save dies anyway, but Nance's sacrifice gives two other men time to reach cover. John Wilkes makes it farther than most, actually reaching the shingle wall at the top of the beach. He sets up his rifle and begins returning fire, picking off German soldiers in the trenches above with the same precision he applied to fixing engines. For 5 precious minutes, he holds his position, covering other men as they advance. A sniper's bullet finally finds him, but his covering fire allows 8 men to move inland. His mechanical skills, applied to the machinery of war, save lives even as his own is ending. 19 boys die in 6 minutes. 19 families destroyed. 19 futures erased. 19 sets of plans and dreams and hopes converted into telegrams that will arrive in Bedford over the next 3 days. For one small town in Virginia, D-Day isn't a glorious victory. It's the loss of an entire generation, the end of bloodlines that stretch back to the founding of the Republic. But here's what mathematics couldn't predict. Here's what transforms tragedy into something approaching the heroic. The 11 who survive keep fighting. Private First Class Ray Nance, not the Ray Nance who died, but another boy with the same name from the same small town, crawls 50 yards through machine gun fire to drag his wounded squad leader to safety. Makes 3 trips back into the killing zone before members force him to stop. Earns the Silver Star for gallantry, though he'll never think he deserves it. Sergeant John Wilkes, cousin of the John Wilkes who died at his rifle, rallies the survivors and leads them up the bluff toward the German position. Takes shrapnel in both legs, but continues advancing until he reaches the enemy trenches. Throws grenades until his arm won't work anymore, then uses his rifle as a club in hand to hand fighting. These men, watching their childhood friends die around them, choose courage over survival. They advance into fire that mathematics says should kill them all. This is what separates human beings from statistics. When confronted with impossible odds, some people find reserves of courage that exist beyond rational calculation. But Bedford's sacrifice is just beginning. Over the next 3 days, Western Union telegrams will arrive at modest homes along Main Street. 19 families will receive the same devastating message. The Secretary of War desires me to express his deep regret that your son was killed in action on June the 6th, 1944 in France. Mrs. Stevens collapses when the telegram arrives. The bread she was kneading when Roy died sits forgotten on the kitchen counter, growing hard and cold. She doesn't speak for 3 days, just sits by the window looking down Main Street, as if her boy might still come walking home. Frances receives the blood-stained photo of herself a week later, along with Bedford's unfinished letter. She frames the photo and puts it on her dresser, never marries, becomes a teacher instead. For 60 years, she tends the graves of the Bedford boys at the local cemetery, placing fresh flowers every Memorial Day and telling their stories to children who'll never know how much their freedom cost. Bedford, Virginia, suffers the highest per capita D-Day losses of any American community. But it also demonstrates something profound about American democracy. These weren't drafted soldiers fighting for abstract principles. These were neighbors and friends who volunteered to defend their way of life, who understood that freedom isn't free and someone has to pay the price. They knew the cost. They paid it willingly, and their sacrifice helped liberate a continent. Heinrich Severloh doesn't want to be here either. 3 months ago, he was helping his father plant spring crops on their farm in Lower Saxony. The same hands that guided plow horses now guide a weapon designed to murder human beings with industrial efficiency. But when the first landing craft appears through the morning mist, 4 years of military training takes over. Severloh has been positioned at Widerstandsnest 62 because he's an exceptional marksman. In civilian competitions before the war, he could hit a playing card at 300 meters. Now, his MG-42 overlooks easy red sector, with perfect fields of fire covering nearly a half-mile of beach. The machine gun position represents architectural perfection in service of death. concrete bunker with walls 8 feet thick, reinforced with steel bars that can absorb the shock of direct hits from naval artillery. Gunport angled to provide maximum coverage while offering minimal target to return fire. Ventilation system designed to prevent carbon monoxide poisoning during extended firing. Ammunition precisely organized with German efficiency. 12,000 rounds of 7.92mm ammunition, each belt linked for continuous fire, each round inspected for defects. Plus, 400 rifle rounds for his backup weapon, a precision Mauser that can kill at 800 meters. Severlo can see individual faces in the approaching boats through his gun sight. Young Americans, nervous but determined. Boys who look exactly like himself. Farm boys and city boys, mechanics and clerks, sons of families who love them and pray for their safe return. I tried not to think of them as human beings, Severlo will write decades later. I tried to think of them as targets, as threats to the fatherland. But targets don't have mothers waiting at home. His loader, Private Hein Severlo, has prepared belt after belt of ammunition, linking them together for continuous fire. Hein is a baker's son from Bavaria who joined the Wehrmacht to avoid starvation. He feeds ammunition into the MG42 with the same precision he once applied to measuring flour. When the first ramp drops at 6:30 a.m., Heinrich Severlo becomes the most lethal individual combatant in human history. The Americans approach in neat formation, exactly as they've rehearsed on beaches in England. 36 men per boat, packed shoulder to shoulder in landing craft made of plywood and hope. When that ramp falls, they're supposed to sprint across the beach in 2 columns, using speed and surprise to overwhelm the defenders. But there's no surprise. Severlo has been watching them approach for 20 minutes through powerful optics that reveal every detail. He's calculated exact ranges, pre-sighted his weapon on likely landing spots, positioned ammunition for maximum efficiency. His hands are steady as a surgeon's as he prepares to begin the killing. The first burst, 150 rounds in 7 seconds. At 150 yards range, every bullet finds human flesh. 15 Americans die before their feet touch French soil. Blood spreads across the surf like spilled paint, mixing with salt water in patterns that will haunt Severlo's dreams for the rest of his life. The second boat beaches 30 yards to the left. Another sustained burst. 12 more dead. Bodies float face down in water that's turning crimson. The third boat tries using the first 2 as cover. Severlo adjusts his aim slightly and fires through the gaps between wrecked landing craft. 14 more casualties. The mathematics of murder proceeding with mechanical precision. This continues for 8 hours. Severlo fires in disciplined bursts, allowing his gun barrel to cool between engagements, just as his instructors taught him. He methodically works his way across the beach from left to right, then back again, like a farmer plowing a field. When ammunition runs low, Hein feeds fresh belts into the weapon without missing a beat. By 8 a.m., 4,000 rounds fired. Severlo's shoulder aches from the weapon's recoil. His ears bleed from the continuous noise. The concrete bunker shakes with each burst of fire. Shell casings pile around his position like brass snow, ankle deep and growing deeper. But still they come. I couldn't understand it, Severlo recalls. Any rational person would have stopped after seeing what happened to the first waves. Any sane military commander would have called retreat, but they just kept charging into my fire. By 10 a.m., 8,000 rounds. Severlo's hands are numb from vibration. His vision blurs from exhaustion and stress. The MG42's barrel glows cherry red from continuous fire. The water cooling system can barely keep up with the heat generated by sustained shooting. But still they come. The Americans show courage beyond anything Severlo witnessed on the Eastern Front. They advance into fire that should break any unit. They crawl over the bodies of their dead comrades to continue the assault. They drag wounded men to safety while under fire themselves. I realized I wasn't fighting soldiers anymore, Severlo writes in his post-war memoir. I was fighting something else. something that wouldn't die no matter how many bullets I fired. By noon, 12,000 rounds fired. Personal count, over 1,000 American casualties. Sevelo's sector of beach is so thick with bodies that subsequent waves have to climb over the dead to advance. The stench becomes overwhelming. Blood, cordite, human waste, burning metal, death itself. Sevelo vomits between firing bursts, but continues working his weapon. His training has made the process automatic. Aim, fire, traverse. Aim, fire, traverse. The MG-42 has become an extension of his body, responding to his will with mechanical precision. I wanted it to stop, he recalls. I wanted them to go away, to call off the attack, to let me go home to my farm and forget this ever happened. But they kept coming, and I kept firing, and men kept dying. But even perfect killing machines have limits. At 1 p.m., American naval gunfire begins landing with surgical precision. The USS Texas and other warships, move dangerously close to shore, start dismantling German positions one by one. 14-inch shells create explosions that shake Sevelo's bunker like an earthquake. The bunker next to his takes a direct hit from a naval gun. The explosion kills 8 men instantly and leaves a crater 20 feet wide. Concrete fragments the size of automobiles fly through the air. The sound is indescribable, like the world ending. It was like the hand of God reaching down to crush us, Sevelo writes. We realized that our time was running out. Heinz Sevelo, his ammunition bearer, dies in the naval bombardment when a shell fragment severs his carotid artery. Heinrich is alone now, feeding belts into his weapon by himself, while American artillery walks closer to his position. But Sevelo keeps firing until the end. Professional soldier to the last, he continues engaging targets until American infantry finally overruns his position at 2 p.m. He empties his last magazine at approaching soldiers, then raises his hands when ammunition is exhausted. He expects immediate execution. Emotions run high after 8 hours of killing. But an American sergeant, a boy not much older than Sevelo himself, accepts his surrender according to military protocol. Drop your weapons and come out with your hands up, the sergeant orders in broken German. Sevelo complies. He's wounded, shrapnel in his left arm from a near miss, but alive. As he emerges from his bunker, he sees the full scope of what he's done. Bodies scattered across the beach like broken dolls. Wounded men crying for medics. Survivors staring at him with expressions he can't read. That's when I realized, Sevelo will write, these weren't the monsters our propaganda described. They were soldiers like me doing their duty. Boys with families and girlfriends and dreams of going home. An American medic treats Sevelo's wounds before he's taken prisoner. The medic, a boy from Ohio with steady hands and kind eyes, works carefully to bandage the shrapnel wound. "Why are you helping me?" Sevelo asks in his limited English. "Because you're hurt," the medic replies simply. Sevelo spends 4 years in Allied prison camps, then returns to his family farm. He becomes a postal worker, spending his days delivering letters and packages to neighbors who never learn about his role in the war's most famous battle. For 40 years, he never speaks about D-Day. The weight of 1,000 deaths is too heavy for words, too enormous for explanation. He suffers nightmares, flashbacks, psychological wounds that don't heal with time. In 1984, on the 40th anniversary, he finally writes his memoir, begins corresponding with American veterans, seeking forgiveness and understanding across the chasm of war. "I want them to know I was just a soldier doing my duty," Sevelo writes to one American survivor. "I want them to know I think about them every day. I want them to know I'm sorry for what I had to do." The responses surprise him with their lack of bitterness. No calls for revenge, no hatred, just understanding between old soldiers who faced each other across the worst day of their lives. "We were all boys doing our duty," Harold Baumgarten writes back. The real enemy was the war itself, not the men who fought it. Everything that can go wrong does go wrong. Not some things, not most things, everything. At 3 a.m. on June the 6th, 329 B-24 Liberator bombers approached the Norman coast, carrying 13,000 bombs. Their target, the German defenses at Omaha Beach. The plan is elegant in its simplicity. Drop more explosive power than the Hiroshima atomic bomb onto a 6-mile stretch of coastline. Pulverize the bunkers. Silence the guns. Clear the path for infantry. But June the 6th dawns grey and stormy. Cloud cover sits at 4,000 feet instead of the forecast 10,000 feet. The bombers can't see their targets through the overcast. Worse, they're terrified of hitting their own landing craft approaching the shore. So they do what seems reasonable under the circumstances. They delay their bomb release by a few seconds to ensure they don't kill Americans. Those few seconds doom thousands of men. The entire bomber payload, 13,000 bombs, 1,285 tons of high explosive, falls harmlessly 3 miles inland, cratering empty Norman fields, while the German gun positions remain completely untouched. Severlo and his fellow machine gunners watch the distant explosions and realize with growing excitement that they've just witnessed the greatest military blunder in history. They missed us completely, Severlo writes in his diary that evening. We couldn't believe our luck. All that firepower wasted on empty fields while we sat here untouched. The bombardment failure isn't discovered until after the war, when intelligence officers interview German survivors. The bombers' navigators, flying through thick clouds with primitive radar, never realized they'd overshot their targets by 3 miles. The third failure proves most devastating of all: navigation. Military operations are exercises in precision. Every soldier in the first wave has studied detailed models of their assigned landing zones for months. They know every bunker, every exit, every fold in the terrain they'll encounter. They've rehearsed this assault dozens of times on similar beaches in England. But ocean currents don't follow military timetables. A 10-knot northwesterly wind, combined with strong tidal currents, pushes the landing craft eastward as they approach shore. Instead of landing at carefully planned positions where intelligence has identified weak points in German defenses, most units wash ashore 1,000 yards off target, directly into the strongest German positions. Company A of the 116th Infantry Regiment, the Bedford Boys, trained for months to assault a specific sector where intelligence identified vulnerabilities in the defensive network. They land directly in front of Heinrich Severlo's machine gun nest. 1,000 yards, the difference between careful planning and random slaughter. Donald A. McCarthy, drafted into the 116th from high school, describes the confusion. I was heading for Easy Green Beach originally, but the coxswain, he was British, told me we just ran out of space. Didn't have anywhere to put us, so they moved us over to Dogred Beach instead. That's where I came in, at Dogred. The navigation failure scatters American units across the beach in complete disorder. Companies lose contact with their battalions. Platoons become separated from their companies. The carefully orchestrated assault dissolves into hundreds of individual fights for survival. Lieutenant Robert Garcia, commanding a platoon of the 29th Division, finds himself 800 yards from his assigned objective, with no way to communicate his position to other units. We trained for 6 months to hit a specific target, Garcia recalls. When we landed in the wrong place, everything we'd learned became useless. We had to improvise tactics on the spot while people were shooting at us. The naval bombardment, conducted from 12 miles offshore to avoid German shore batteries, proves equally ineffective. The battleships can't hit anything smaller than a city block. Precision targets, machine gun nests, mortar positions, bunker gun ports remain completely operational. USS Texas fires massive 14-inch shells that create spectacular explosions, but miss most of their intended targets. The concrete bunkers, designed to withstand direct hits, absorb punishment that would level city blocks while their occupants continue fighting. Anthony Beaver, the military historian, provides context. The visibility was still very bad on June the 6th. They were supposed to have had cloud cover below 10,000 feet, but in fact, it was at 4,000 feet. The heavy bombers couldn't even see their targets. But perhaps the most devastating failure involves communication between air and naval forces. The bombers and ships operate on different radio frequencies, preventing coordination that might have corrected targeting errors in real time. By every calculation, by every precedent established in previous amphibious operations, by every military manual ever written, Omaha Beach should be the greatest disaster in American military history. The bombardment has failed completely. The amphibious armor is sitting on the ocean floor. The troops are landing in the wrong places. Intelligence has missed the presence of an entire German division. But human beings refuse to accept mathematics. While the Navy gets credit for the D-Day landings, many of the most dangerous jobs fall to the United States Coast Guard, men trained for rescue operations, who find themselves delivering soldiers into the mouth of hell. Coast Guard coxswains pilot dozens of the Higgins boats approaching Omaha Beach. These men know small boat handling better than anyone in the American military. They understand tides, currents, and wave action with the expertise that comes from years of rescuing people from hostile waters. But navigating landing craft through German artillery fire represents challenges no Coast Guard training ever anticipated. Signalman First Class Douglas Munro operates a rescue boat specifically assigned to pick up survivors from sinking landing craft and drowning tank crews. When the DD tanks begin sinking 5,000 yards offshore, Munro immediately heads toward the disaster area. "Those boys are drowning out there," Munro tells his crew. "We're going to get them." Munro's boat makes 7 trips into the area where tanks are sinking, pulling survivors from the English Channel while German shore batteries fire at anything that moves. The work requires precise boat handling in heavy seas while under direct artillery observation. Tank crews, weighted down with equipment and trapped in sinking vehicles, have perhaps 2 minutes to escape before their Sherman tanks reach the bottom. Munro's crew throws lines to swimming soldiers, hauls unconscious men from the water, performs mouth-to-mouth resuscitation on tankers who've nearly drowned. "We saved 14 tank crew members," Munro reports to his commander. 14 out of 160. The rest went down with their tanks. But Munro's most dangerous work comes after the beach assault begins. His boat, clearly marked with Coast Guard insignia, moves back and forth between the landing zones and the offshore vessels, evacuating wounded soldiers under constant fire. German gunners specifically target evacuation craft, understanding that preventing medical evacuation destroys American morale more effectively than killing healthy soldiers. Munro's boat takes multiple hits from machine gun fire but continues operating. Coast Guard coxswain Ray Ramsey pilots Landing Craft Infantry 85, a larger vessel designed to carry 200 troops directly onto the beach. LCI 85 makes 7 trips to Omaha Beach during D-Day, delivering reinforcements and evacuating wounded under increasingly heavy fire. "The Germans had our range after the 3rd trip," Ramsey recalls. "They knew exactly where we'd beach and when we'd be most vulnerable. But we kept going because those boys needed ammunition and medical evacuation." On his 6th trip, LCI 85 takes a direct hit from an 88mm shell that kills 12 Coast Guardsmen and wounds 18 others. Ramsey, bleeding from shrapnel wounds in his face and arms, continues operating the vessel until all wounded soldiers are evacuated. "You don't abandon your shipmates," Ramsey explains decades later. Coast Guard doctrine says you keep trying until there's nobody left to save. The Coast Guard's small boat expertise proves crucial for operations that Navy coxswains can't handle. When landing craft become stranded on sandbars or damaged by obstacles, Coast Guard crews use their specialized knowledge to refloat vessels and continue operations. Chief Boatswain's mate Anthony Raimondo leads a team of Coast Guard mechanics who work under fire to repair damaged landing craft engines. His team operates from LCI 85, using the larger vessel as a floating repair shop for smaller boats. We had Higgins boats coming alongside with engines that wouldn't start, propellers damaged by obstacles, steering systems shot up by machine gun fire, Raimondo reports. We fixed what we could and got them back into service. Raimondo's team repairs 37 landing craft during D-Day, keeping them in service when replacement boats aren't available. The work requires technical expertise under combat conditions that would challenge peacetime mechanics. But perhaps the Coast Guard's most important contribution comes from their understanding of surf and tide conditions. Coast Guard weather specialists provide the final recommendations that determine whether D-Day proceeds on June the 6th or gets postponed again. Chief Aerographer's mate, Irving Crick, working with British meteorologists, analyzes weather patterns across the North Atlantic and predicts a brief window of marginally acceptable conditions on June the 6th. The weather isn't good, Crick reports to Eisenhower, but it's the best we're going to get for at least 2 weeks. If we don't go tomorrow, we'll have to wait until mid-July. Crick's weather forecast proves accurate enough to allow the invasion to proceed, though conditions remain challenging throughout the day. His expertise in maritime weather patterns helps ensure that D-Day happens when it needs to happen. The Coast Guard's contribution to D-Day demonstrates the importance of specialized skills in military operations. While infantry courage gets most of the attention, technical expertise in seamanship, weather forecasting, and small boat operations proves equally critical to success. Coast Guard personnel receive less recognition than their Navy and Army counterparts, but their specialized knowledge saves hundreds of lives on D-Day. They prove that every military specialty has its moment when specific expertise becomes the difference between success and failure. Before anyone else, before the infantry who need the paths, before the armor that doesn't exist, 32 naval combat demolition units charge ashore carrying enough explosives to level several city blocks. These men are volunteers, not just volunteers for military service, but volunteers for the most dangerous job in the most dangerous operation of the war. They know exactly what they're facing, and they do it anyway. Their mission borders on suicide: clear 16 gaps through 3,000 German obstacles, while under direct machine gun fire from positions specifically sighted to kill anyone working in the obstacle zone. Beach reconnaissance has identified the German defensive system in chilling detail. Over 3,000 individual obstacles positioned between the high water mark and the low tide line, each one precisely placed to channel landing craft into killing zones where German artillery can destroy them systematically. Steel hedgehogs, twisted rails welded into geometric shapes that can rip the bottom out of a landing craft moving at speed. Concrete pyramids that can stop a Sherman tank. Belgian gates, steel frameworks designed to entangle boats and hold them stationary while gunners find their range. Wooden stakes topped with telemines, anti-personnel devices that explode when touched, killing anyone within a 20-yard radius. Each stake positioned at the exact tide level where landing craft will strike them if they don't spot the danger in time. The engineers have 30 minutes to blow 16 gaps through this maze before the rising tide covers their work area. 30 minutes to handle high explosives with steady hands while machine gun bullets snap past their heads every few seconds. Naval Combat Demolition Unit 5, led by Chief Petty Officer William Freeman, provides the most dramatic example of courage under impossible circumstances. Freeman's 8-man team carries 2,400 pounds of composition C4 explosive, enough to demolish several city blocks if detonated simultaneously. Their target, a line of steel hedgehogs protecting the Dog Green exit, one of only 5 vehicle routes off Omaha Beach. If this gap isn't blown, American armor and artillery can't get inland. The entire operation could fail for lack of logistical support. Freeman's team beaches at 6:30 a.m., directly in front of Heinrich Sevelo's machine gun nest. Machine gun fire cuts down 4 men before they can even unload their equipment from the landing craft. Freeman takes rifle bullets through both legs but continues working. "I couldn't feel my legs anymore," Freeman recalls years later, "but I could still use my hands. and this job required hands more than legs. The work requires absolute precision under impossible conditions. Too little explosive, and the obstacles remain intact, blocking subsequent landing craft. Too much explosive, and the blast kills your own men or damages neighboring gaps that other teams are trying to clear. The composition's C4 must be shaped precisely to direct the blast upward and outward, clearing debris rather than simply moving it around. Each charge requires careful calculation based on the obstacle's size, construction, and position relative to neighboring obstacles. The timing devices must be synchronized, so all charges detonate simultaneously, creating clean passages rather than scattered fields of twisted metal. Freeman works for 25 minutes with bullets snapping past his head, blood streaming from his leg wounds, his hands steady as a surgeon's as he connects detonation cord between charges. At 6:55 a.m., Freeman triggers the master detonator. The explosion creates a thunderclap audible 5 miles away, lifting a column of water and debris 200 feet into the air. When the spray settles, a perfect 50-yard gap appears through the obstacle field. But the cost is terrible. Of 8 men who came ashore with Freeman, only 2 are still able to fight. Freeman himself requires immediate evacuation for blood loss and shock, but his work is complete. Across the beach, similar scenes play out at 15 other locations. Teams of engineers, most of them wounded, working with high explosives, while under direct fire from multiple German positions. Lieutenant George Kirchner's team at Easy Green demonstrates the technical complexity of this work. Their target includes Belgian gates connected by underwater cables to mines that explode when the gates are disturbed. It was like defusing a bomb while someone shoots at you, Kirchner explains. Touch the wrong wire and you blow yourself up. But leave the obstacles intact and the landing craft can't get through. Kirchner's team spends 40 minutes underwater, breathing through primitive diving apparatus, cutting cables, and removing mines by hand. German snipers fire at them whenever they surface for air. Mortar rounds explode in the water around them, creating underwater concussions that can rupture lungs. They successfully clear their assigned gap, but at a cost of 6 casualties out of 8 men. The 2 survivors, Kirchner and Seaman First Class Robert Watson, are both wounded, but continue working until the rising tide covers their position. Seaman Watson, despite taking shrapnel in his back from a mortar round, makes 3 trips underwater to cut cables connecting mines to Belgian gates. Each trip requires him to hold his breath for over 2 minutes while working with cutting tools in 0 visibility. I couldn't see anything down there, Watson recalls. Had to work by feel, hoping I was cutting the right cables. If I cut the wrong one, the mine would explode and take me with it. Watson's work clears the final obstacle in the Easy Green Gap, allowing landing craft to bring supplies and reinforcements ashore throughout the day. His technical expertise under combat conditions saves hundreds of lives. By 7 a.m., the Naval Combat Demolition Units have suffered 52% casualties, the highest loss rate of any unit participating in D-Day, but they've blown 6 of their 16 assigned gaps through the obstacle field. 6 passages that become highways to victory. The gaps are narrow, just 50 yards wide in a beach frontage of 6 miles. But they represent the difference between total disaster and manageable catastrophe. Without these passages, landing craft would pile up in the obstacle zone, presenting stationary targets for German artillery. With them, subsequent waves can reach the beach with vehicles and heavy equipment, turning a potential massacre into a fighting chance. Chief Petty Officer Freeman survives his wounds and returns to civilian life as a construction foreman. He never speaks publicly about his role in D-Day until the 40th anniversary, when a reporter tracks him down. "We did what we had to do," Freeman says simply. "A lot of good men died to blow those gaps. I just happened to be one who lived to talk about it." But the gaps represent more than tactical necessity. They represent the difference between individual heroism and collective success. One man's courage might inspire others, but it takes coordinated sacrifice to achieve strategic objectives. The Naval Combat Demolition Units prove that democracy's greatest strength isn't individual freedom, but individual willingness to sacrifice freedom for the common good. While soldiers fight for their lives on Omaha Beach, photographer Robert Capa fights to document their courage for history. Armed with 2 Contax cameras and extraordinary bravery, Capa lands with the second wave of assault troops to capture images that will define the visual record of D-Day. Capa, born André Friedman in Hungary, has covered wars in Spain, China, and North Africa. He understands combat photography requires getting close enough to capture truth, even when truth includes bullets flying past your head. "If your pictures aren't good enough, you aren't close enough," Capa famously says. On Omaha Beach, he gets close enough to almost die. Capa lands at Easy Red Sector at 6:45 a.m., 15 minutes after the first wave. The beach is already littered with bodies and wrecked equipment. Machine gun fire forces him to crawl on his belly, cameras protected under his body, film canisters wrapped in waterproof containers.